Pakistan, a nation of 220 million people and the fifth most populous country in the world, is currently heading towards a looming debt default. The South Asian nation has been struggling with its finances for years now, and despite multiple interventions by international financial institutions like IMF, World Bank, and ADB, it hasn't been able to get its fiscal house in order. At present, Pakistan's external debt stands at around $115 billion, which includes loans from China, under CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, multilateral lenders like IMF and World Bank, as well as sovereign bonds issued on international markets. This massive amount of indebtedness, coupled with weak exports and declining foreign reserves, has put immense pressure on the cash-strapped government to service its obligations. The situation has become so dire that many experts fear that Pakistan could soon default on its debts, triggering a major financial crisis not just within the country but also across global markets. In this article, we'll take a closer look at why Pakistan finds itself in such a precarious position and what it needs to do to avoid an economic catastrophe. Pakistan mounting debt crisis. The situation has been exacerbated by factors such as an increase in imports and a decrease in exports, leading to a widening trade deficit. The government's attempts to address the issue have thus far proved insufficient, with measures such as borrowing from friendly countries and implementing austerity measures falling short of expectations. This has resulted in Pakistan resorting to seeking aid from international organizations like the International Monetary Fund, IMF, for assistance. Inflation in Pakistan was already a problem as a result of the conflict in Ukraine, and then the country was hit by a climatic disaster that ruined its infrastructure and crops. The floods of last year caused more than $30 billion in losses to the Pakistani economy. Pakistan is now experiencing wheat scarcity despite being the 8th largest producer of wheat in the world. Due to the smuggling of flour into Afghanistan, the cost of roti increased. What happens if Pakistan defaults on its debt? Pakistan is currently facing a grave economic crisis due to its mounting debt. With the country's economy on a downward spiral, there is growing concern about what would happen if Pakistan defaults on its debt. According to recent reports, Pakistan's external debts have crossed $112 billion, which amounts to 36% of the country's GDP. The situation has become so dire that Pakistan is now struggling to pay back its creditors and keep up with its interest payments. If this were to happen, it could spell disaster for Pakistan's already fragile economy. A default would mean that international investors would lose confidence in the country's ability to repay its debts, leading to higher borrowing costs and crippling financial instability. It could also lead to a sharp devaluation of the Pakistani rupee and rising inflation, making life even more difficult for ordinary citizens who are already grappling with high living costs. There are still some measures that can be taken to prevent such a scenario from playing out. In the next section, we will take a closer look at who can save Pakistan from economic default. Who can save Pakistan from economic default? One possible solution could be seeking help from friendly countries like China or Saudi Arabia. These two nations have invested heavily in Pakistan's infrastructure and development projects before, and they might come forward once again to offer their support. Additionally, other international organizations such as IMF and World Bank could also play a vital role if approached correctly. Another alternative that Pakistan can consider is increasing its exports to bring more foreign currency into the country. This move will not only reduce debt but also boost the overall economy. Moreover, It would create jobs for thousands of unemployed individuals across the nation. During a recent summit in Geneva, Pakistan received offers totaling more than $10 billion from a variety of donors for the restoration of flood-affected areas. At least $20 billion more is required by Pakistan for the flood-affected districts. It is challenging for Pakistan to pay $274 billion in debt, or over 79% of its GDP. Pakistan's foreign exchange reserves are less than $4 billion, and it must pay more than $8 billion in debts by March 2023. Conclusion: if Pakistan defaults on its debt, it could potentially lead to severe consequences such as inflation, unemployment, and even social unrest. It's time for someone to step up and save this sinking ship before it's too late. But who can do that? The government seems more concerned with petty politics than the welfare of its citizens. Perhaps it's time for international organizations or neighboring countries to lend a helping hand. Or maybe we should just sit back and watch as Pakistan becomes the latest victim of poor financial management.